Greetings 653 students, Professor Gura here. I want to give you an introduction to the final project that goes beyond the materials you'll find in the final project folder in our Blackboard section. The intention of the project is to make you aware of planning processes for school improvement through the integration of technology. And the final project is something we'll be working on most of the semester. I think at first glance, it may seem a little overwhelming. I think it is a complex project, but if you follow me through this introduction, I think you'll see that we can wrap our brain around what the elements of the project are, what its intention is, and we can unpack all of this to a point where understanding what you need to do and why becomes fairly obvious. So let's move forward. By the way, I'm going to recommend that you go to the folder titled Final Project. So in our Blackboard section, you'll see a section called Coursework. If you go in there, you'll find just a few folders, one of which is labeled Final Project, and everything you're going to need to do the final project is in that folder. So if you haven't thoroughly inspected that folder yet, you might want to stop this presentation, go do that, walk yourself through there, take a look at what's provided, ask yourself why is it provided, how is it organized, and then come back and join me for the next section of this introduction. Okay, so in this project, you will be researching, selecting, and planning how to implement a new digitally supported instructional practice for a school. And probably what comes to your mind right away is, well, what school? And does this mean I have to actually go into a real school and come up with a real practice and actually implement that with the staff and the principal? And of course, the answer is no. The focus of this project is for you to learn how to do these things, to understand the processes behind them. So basically, you're going to make up a school, a fictitious school. And if you want, you can even have some fun with that. On the other hand, as any fiction writer would tell you, a good deal of research into reality goes into writing fiction. And I think the same is true here. You're going to come up with a school, and probably this is going to be based on either the school you went to as a student, or schools you've worked in as a teacher, or schools you know about or read about. So bear that in mind. This is just an unnamed pretend school based on what you know about schools. And in the process of conceiving this made-up school and doing the research to help it, you may very well go, if you're assuming you're a teacher, you may go to work and interview or just have an informal chat with some of your colleagues about concerns and understandings of what good practice is and ways the school might change and grow. You might dig a little bit deeper. You might actually look at some of the school's performance records. You might talk to some of the instructional experts or the administrators there. But in the end, you're not really doing a project in a real school. This is a hypothetical. So let's say you've conjured up in your mind a school, and your vision of that school, your understanding of that school is that it has a performance level from the students that indicates that learning in certain areas is not up to a satisfactory level. Let's say that in that school, you and the principal and your colleague teachers all agree that certain aspects of math learning really should be higher than what you're seeing from the students. However, it is that achievement happens to be measured in that school. So your job then will be to identify a practice that you could introduce to the school that the teachers could embrace and bring into their teaching of their students that's likely to improve the level of learning. And of course, we're concerned now with practices that are supported or defined by technology. To some of our colleagues, that might sound like a very tall order. Where would I go to find out about a new practice? How would I investigate this? And the good news is that this is part of our profession. A good percentage of our colleagues are experimenters, and when they come up with solutions to problems that are commonly appreciated by other teachers, they write about the practices they develop or try. So rest assured, there's a very, very large body of articles out there, and by out there I mean in libraries and especially virtual libraries on the web. So a good portion of what you'll be doing in this project is going out and doing searches, trying to locate articles that you feel are relevant. You'll be reading much of this. You'll be analyzing what's said in the articles. You'll be evaluating it. And in fact, you will be determining the criteria by which you will evaluate it too. So I think it's safe to say you're going to get an expanded vision of what's going on in the field. There's something like 4 million teachers in the U.S. currently, and our colleagues have been writing about successful practices for a very long time, and there's quite a body of material for us to sift through as we do something like this, trying to find a solution to what we consider to be a weakness or a problem. This is the kind of thing that's done all the time. Okay, so now we're ready to go out there into that great virtual library of professional material that is the World Wide Web, or our segment of the World Wide Web, the educational segment, and we want to go and find some great practices to help our hypothetical school better teach its students, to help its students learn better. But I have to hold up for just a minute, because we have to really think about what kind of school that is, because For instance, if our school is primarily English speakers, finding a language arts practice that's directed at and explained in French language isn't going to do us much good. If we're in a school of high achievers who we want to serve as educators by guiding them to even higher achievement, we don't want to look for practices that are conceived for low achievers, and vice versa. If our students are physically challenged, if their visual acuity, for instance, is minimal and they're challenged visually, then chances are we don't want to look for practices that are directed at visual learning. And there are many other success factors too. We want to look for a fresh, exciting, visionary new practice that involves the use of technology. But then again, what sort of technology? Is it a practice that relies on interactive whiteboards? Many of them are. And they might be great practices, assuming that our school, our hypothetical focus school, has interactive whiteboards available for the teacher. Maybe we'll find a practice that really involves one-to-one laptop implementations. Does our hypothetical school have that degree of technology saturation? Does every kid have access to a mobile device? And similarly, what level of technology sophistication does the staff have? Perhaps our hypothetical school needs a new practice that involves technology, but a very simple use of technology. Basically, go into a cloud-based resource and clicking launch or begin, and letting the resource do everything for the teacher and the student. So the long and the short of it is, we really need to go find out about what's going on in the school. Where's the school at? Not only where are its instructional weaknesses, but what are its capacities? What sorts of things would we be capable of implementing in the school? This really indicates a lot of thought and reflection and digging on our part. But the plus side to this is, once we get a good handle on that, then selecting the practice from the many we may come across should be much easier. I think you'll find it convenient to conceive of the final project as a great many elements that fall into three major categories. So again, do the final project, the first thing you're going to do is to investigate needs and capabilities of the specific school you're planning for. After you've determined what the school's like, what are its needs, which areas need improvement, what are the capabilities of the school to prove that you can count on your planning. You're going to move on to the next segment, the literature review. And the literature review really is the central segment and the reason for the final project. So before you get to the literature review, you will have looked through many possible articles and practices to choose from. And quite naturally and normally, you will begin to sort them out as you're looking through them. Even at first glance, the headings and the little summaries that often appear below the headings, the titles, you'll understand that some of them probably are going to fit into the needs for the school, and some of them clearly won't. And by the way, the more you pin down the need, the easier it will be for you to do this. So if your school is pre-K through 12 school, and there are some of those, that's a very broad range of grade levels, this is going to be difficult. If you have pinned down your need, your area of interest, upper elementary, say grades 3, 4, 5, or middle school, 6, 7, 8, you've already begun to narrow this down. If you identified which subject area, say math or language arts, again, you've narrowed it down. If within the area of math, you're looking at fractions, it's narrower yet. So you get the idea. You want to be fairly focused on the need you're looking to satisfy with the new practice. At any rate, at a certain point, you will have sifted through a great many possibilities, and you will have selected a small body of articles on practices that seem very promising and that you want to take a close look at and you want to evaluate carefully because you understand one of them is going to be it. And you're going to have to speak to how you came to that decision and why it is that you feel that the one you select and towards the end of the literature review is the one that makes the most sense and is the most promising to your task, which is to identify a need, find a practice, satisfy it, and do a little planning about how you're going to implement that practice. So that's segment B, the big one, the formal literature review. And by the time you've done that, you will have done a great many small tasks in conceiving and reflecting and gathering information and drawing the smaller decisions on which you make big decisions. And so the final aspect, the final dimension of what you're going to need to do is you're going to assemble all of this in some kind of order that makes sense to a reader, and you will come up with a finished version that really tells the whole story. What is the school and what are its needs and its capabilities, which is the one you identified as the one you want to address, what's the process you went through to identify the practice you've selected, what's involved in the practice, how will you know that this practice work or not, and on and on. So again, think of it as three segments, a kind of preparatory segment in which you're defining your project and doing background work, the very formal literature review, and then the assembling of all of this into some sort of final version suitable to present. If you look in our course schedule of assignments, you'll see that we have article review and response assignments, we have themed assignments, and we also have 2 final project preparation assignments. So, what are these preparation assignments? Basically, it's a formalized, guided way for you to begin work on your final project early in the semester and to carry through throughout the semester. It's also a way for you to report to me, the professor, what you've done so far, and for me to give you some good feedback on how you're doing with it. So you'll find that there are 3 areas, and we'll get into that in the next section, what those 3 are. But the idea is for you to begin all 3 of these in the first preparation assignment, and then a few weeks later to revisit them and to flesh them out further and to make changes. The idea here is that you will be learning about technology integration from a tech leader's point of view, an expert's point of view throughout the semester. And as you do more readings and as you do more themed assignments, your understanding, perspective, and body of knowledge will be refined and expanded. And that should be reflected in what you have to say in the final project. So again, for the first of the prep assignments, you'll simply begin these 3 items. And then a few weeks later, you will revisit them, expand on them, refine them, carry them forward a little bit. So, what's in the preparation assignment? Actually, 3 things you'll be doing. 1, I've provided a little activity called the Final Project Prep Worksheet. I'll explain it really as having to do with planning. This final project, which is very much based in actual practice in the field. This is how an instructional specialist would go about planning this sort of thing. It actually is a complex process that involves doing many things and doing them in order. So you'll find that the project prep worksheet is really a kind of an outline. What's the first thing you want to do? Okay, probably it has to do with looking at the school. What kind of a school do we have? What kind of a school are we working for? What's the school's needs, and how will we determine that? Will we look through records? Will we interview people? Will we look at the school's report card? Other, and how will we determine what sorts of things the teachers might be capable of doing and amenable to doing? There's a great many little items that we need to do from start to finish. And that includes the literature review and beyond. So the worksheet basically is a listing of all of the things you think you'll have to do and the order you're going to do them in. And of course, as you continue to research, read, reflect, discuss with colleagues, and learn about this process, your worksheet's going to change. You may find that what was the first thing you now is the third thing. You probably discover new things that need to be added to the list, and on and on. Involved in all of this is reading and researching. So there's the research log. What did you find? How did you find? I mean, what sort of query did you put into the search engine? What did it turn up? Perhaps some observations about what it turned up. Perhaps you want to change something about your project now that you see what sorts of articles actually are available. And finally, the project query. So yes, early on you'll begin to think, okay, I think I understand the kind of school I'm planning for, and yeah, I think probably I'm going to discover some weaknesses in the way math or language arts is taught, and I suspect that maybe it's writing or maybe fractions. At any rate, before we go into the formal literature review, we want to be able to sharpen up our definition of what we're looking for. We want to come up with clearly defined, clearly voiced query. And so you'll do that through the third item, the project query. And again, you're going to do all of this twice, although that doesn't mean starting from scratch. It simply means the second time around, and perhaps the third time when you're ready to do the final version, you will drop some things, add some things, reorder some things, edit, refine, and edit again. In our field, we come across literature that discusses practices and the resources that support them from numerous sources. Many of these may be commercial. Resource providers often issue research that's in their favor, or reviews in their favor, or articles that discuss their offering. There are a lot of blog posts that they honestly discuss practices, but not in great depth, and not citing any research or quotes from authorities that are trustworthy. There are all sorts of sources that we might come across that at first glance may look like they have everything to do with the kind of practice and or resource we're looking for. However, we have to establish and apply some standards to which sources we're going to consider valid for implementation in school. We need to be serious about this, and we need to hold it to a higher professional standard. At any rate, in the final project folder, you'll find materials that suggest where you might find such resources. Certainly that will help you determine the sorts of sources that can be trusted or cited or referenced, and those that probably should not. And certainly there's material there that will tell you how to organize and write up your literature review into a final state that is up to the standards of our profession. Okay, so when you finally get around to creating the final version of your final project, you will have done a lot of work. You will have gone through a great number of articles. You will have done a good number of things to categorize, analyze, reject, accept, and prioritize items that you come across, and you'll want to put all of this into a rather polished final version that the reader will be able to get through comfortably and get the point that you've made. So you might want to think about this kind of like putting on a show or writing a book. In other words, the final version is something of a story. What did you do? Why did you do it? How did you go about it? What were the discoveries you made along the way? What methods did you have to search out? What items and methods did you create to support yourself in working through all of this? And so in addition to the items we've already discussed, you're probably going to want to write a short introduction. You're going to want to produce an index of all of the items. You're going to want to summarize what you've done. That's pretty much a standard thing for this sort of project. After the title comes a short summary, oftentimes a half a page or thereabouts, that sums up the whole thing, kind of as part of the introduction into the longer version. And probably you will have created some things. You might have created some surveys, or at the very least, you might have created some questions for surveys or interviews. You might have created rubrics or rating sheets. You might have created methodologies for sorting through all the materials you gathered and rated, and on and on. So the more you include actual samples of these sorts of things, the stronger your final version will be. All right, so the first thing you'll do is go through the final project folder, totally familiarize yourself with what's in there, and then wrap your brain around what this experience is going to look like for you over the next few months. Um, Begin as soon as you can, and the first version of the preparation project can be sketchy. Just get down on paper what it is you think initially you need to do and what that's going to look like and how that's going to work. And then keep a record of the things you read. Keep working on it, keep refining it, editing it, making it better, changing things around. And always, as always, feel free to email me with any questions or confusions you may have. I think you're going to find in the end that while this project is a lot of work, it's a valuable one, and it will really open your eyes to a very important process and set of possibilities in our field.